Welcome to the Bring It On Home podcast. I'm Frankie V, former Sydney and London resident, now living in Nashville, Tennessee. This podcast features interviews with the various characters I come across in my travels through the music heartland of the American South. I was excited to get the opportunity to interview my next guest. Brendan Malone is a prominent figure in Nashville's nascent retro country scene, the face of Honky Tonk Tuesday nights, bass player for the Cowpokes, and a staple at Robert's Western World. Honky Tonk Tuesdays and the American Legion post-82 have been a big part of my life in Nashville and that of my friends, so it's great to be able to capture its story. Hope you sit back and enjoy this podcast.
I originally came here to town, working as a valet and also as front door at Robert's. So I was doing valet at the Hutton Hotel down in West End, and then I was also working the front door at Roberts. So and that's just, I was kind of in between all that.
But was it like accidental, or was like you knew you liked Roberts, so you're like, hell, I'm going to get a job there?
Yeah, I already knew about Roberts, and I liked Roberts all the time. I would come and visit. I started coming out here in 2005, and on my own, that is. And then, I just always fell in love with Nashville, and especially Robert's Western World, and I just knew that's where I wanted to be. And then after the third day of being there in a row, they're like, why don't you just start working here? And that's just kind of how it happened. I started working the door. That's how I met my wife. Later on, I was working the front door. She came walking in with Manuel because she was interning with Manuel. It was Halloween night. I was wearing a mariachi outfit, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. Like how a night can change people's lives. I don't think people appreciate what a nightclub is. It's not like a band or an album comes out. You got the album. It's like literally just a spontaneous occurrence.
Yeah, it's
regular spontaneous occurrence.
As if there's a magnet, let's say. Yeah. And we're all attached to this magnet. And that's what Robert's Western World is, and that's what magnifies what we're all into and what we dig, And that's a place that you want to be at, because everything that represents anything vintage, anything cool, anything that is Nashville and what Nashville really represents and what made Nashville Music City happens in that building. And that's what attracts us, and that's what attracted my wife with Manuel coming down there.
Yeah, and I suppose I guess the beauty of things like the Palace and the Legion is that, like, Roberts is such a small space, and it's like a place for tourists. Like you share a love for everybody, but it happens there. But it's too small a space to, it's awkward to get to. But then you have the Legion and the Nashville Palace. They open the door up to, for the locals, need a bit more space.
Yeah.
And also for new ideas rather than just, and how, so tell us the story. Like, I fortuitously came into, maybe Honky Tonk Tuesday maybe 3 months after you guys started, or 6 months, not too long into it. So, Emily Nanny was playing regularly then and stuff like that. It was still fairly small, but,
yeah.
So how did that arise? Like, what was the set of circumstances?
Yeah. So how I even started going down to the Legion was through Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell started working at Robert's Western World, and again, another place. How Roberts ends up in the picture. And he just started working the front door there, and that was about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And he was like, you got to see the American Legion in East Nashville. Like, you just got to go there. And I was like, well, I've driven by it 1,000 times, but never would have thought to ever go in it. He's like, yeah, I want to start doing these singer-songwriter nights on Wednesday nights. But you just got to go in there, man. It's going to blow your mind. It's like a step back into time. They're only listening to old country in the jukebox. There's barely anyone there. They still smoke indoors there. I was like, cool. So one night, my friend Corey Once and Hugh Masterson, we were bowling one night. And we were trying to find something to do. We're like, hey, there's this place that my friend told me about. His name is Matt. He just moved to town. He's working at Roberts. He said we have to go to this place because he's starting a singer-songwriter night. I was like, all right, cool, let's go down there. And right away we stepped in to the American Legion, and they're playing Carl Smith on the jukebox. They were smoking indoors, and like at the time I smoked, I don't anymore. And we just loved the place. And then like right after that, after being there an hour, we called our buddy Josh Headley, like, hey, you got to come down here. You're gonna flip out when you see this place. Mm-hmm. He comes down, and all of a sudden, after that night, for the next 5 months, it becomes everyone's who's in like the music industry, especially in the country music scene, anywhere from Gillian Welch and
she's been there.
Oh yeah, even when before we started doing Honky Tonk Tuesday nights, she was like some of the few people that was hanging out there as their like secret bar.
Crazy.
So you'd see everyone from like Margaret Price to Gillian Welch to all that kind of people.
Okay.
Who it was just kind of our secret bar. And then about after like 4 months of hanging out there, the commander at the time came up to me and was like, hey, you know, just by you guys hanging out here and drinking here, you guys have helped this place stay open. It's like, we need to make it more busy here. Can you put on a music night? I was like, yeah, sure. That's how Honky Tonk Tuesday night started right after that. And at the time I was playing with Stu Arkoff, and we started he had like a honky tonk band called the Swampy Tonk Drifters, and that was the band as the house band there. And then he went back to Australia for a while, and that's how kind of the Cowpokes came around at that same point in time. And that's how just Honky Tonk Tuesdays just drifted on to being a number one thriving place to hear real country music in Nashville.
Yeah, I've got tons of questions around this sort of stuff. Okay, so probably should do this chronologically though. And we talked about this the other day, the kind of little points of change, things that sort of change the place. And I certainly think, we mentioned this before, but Jack White turning up for 4 weeks consecutively, that was a little bit of a milestone, because all of a sudden the car park just went from
yeah.
Like someone like you could park there easily, and then all of a sudden you might have to go across the street, and it certainly was the start of something.
Yeah, it really was. We started off, you know, probably the first night we ever did it, started off with maybe like 20 people. The next week and the next week after that was still at 20 people. And then probably like 2 months in, we got up to like 30 people. And then after that, it started going up. Like every week we started getting a little bit more and more people. And then seriously, I remember it was our 1 year anniversary. I remember Jack White being there because he was one of the people who like brought out the cake. The Legion folks, the Legionnaires brought out like a 1 year anniversary cake with all like the posters on the cake, and he was one of the ones who like brought out the cake with them. And I remember at that point he'd already been there for like maybe like a month or two every week. Like it wasn't like he was here every now and then. Like he literally was there like every week, and he was dancing with everyone, as you knew. And yeah, that's just kind of how that happened. And then so it was probably like around like the 8th month or so that he first started coming there. I'm sure he learned that from Lily Mae. And it just kind of went from a steady 35 to 50 people sometime to every night, no matter what, 200 people.
Yeah.
And that kind of set the bar right then. And that was at our 1 year mark. Because I remember, like I said, with that cake, he brought it out. And at that point, it's never been a dull crowd on a Tuesday night.
No, and then you went on to get some pretty amazing kind of one-offs that, you know, like Margaret Price played there with the full entourage, I think, and Dale Watson, Amy Lou Harris with Vince Gill. I mean, that's insane. That's an insane lineup.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, you could be dreaming. And in a venue, like you said it yourself, that venue does half the job right there. You feel like Patsy Cline could walk right onto that stage.
Yeah, man. There's like, it just has this nostalgic feel to it. And the cool thing is, what I've learned throughout the years being there is that all the Opry stars who were in the military, that was the Legion they all hung out at.
Oh, wow.
So ones that served in World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, Desert Storm, all that stuff, they all hung out there. Like Greg Guerin can even tell you about when he hung out there in the 80s with Dick Curlis, Towns Van Zandt, all these folks. They even at that time, that was, you know, the mid 80s, and still at that time, Townes Van Zandt would have been kind of a newer person in that scene. And there were still people that were, Mel Tillis served in the military, Farron Young, all these folks, they were all part of that American Legion scene, but no one really knows about that because they were there for a thing called the Rope meetings, and it's I can't remember exactly what it stands for now, being put on the spot, but it's something blah blah, friends and family of entertainers, and it's all friends and families of people who were in the country music scene, and so they would put on these certain shows and they would host it at the American Legions because a lot of the Opry stars at that time had served past the military or had friends or family in the military. So that's where they kind of hung out at and everything. And then just years go by, of course in East Nashville, kind of went downhill for a while. And so just no revenue was going there until we kind of started hanging out there.
Yeah, fortunately. Oh my God. And so the other thing I wanted to ask about is like when Emmylou played, you made a point of telling people that, not to crowd on the dance floor, that this is a dance kind of night and stuff like. Where does that come from? I mean, that like resonates with my heart. But when did you guys kind of go, this is a dance night?
Well, I've always had that set as that's what this night is. Any place that you would ever play or to attend a concert that was during that time, like for instance, if we play a song from the 1947, or we play a song from 1953, or what have you, when people were actually playing those songs in the present day, they had dancers in front of them. That's what it was all about. A lot of those people, they loved to tour in Texas because they had a dance hall circuit, and even in Tennessee, when they would play in Tennessee, they would play to a big dance hall crowd. That's what it's always been, but for some reason, since the 80s or the 70s or whatever, everything turned into a seated auditorium or a seated area. Even if it's at an auditorium, but everything's open in front of them, there's chairs in front of them. Like, this is dancing music, and a lot of this stuff is all circuited around, moving around. Either be a square dance, what have you. Like, we want to represent that during all of our things. We want to bring it back to the times in the glory days of country and western music and dancing, because that's what it's all about. Because
music to my ears, man.
Yeah.
You get to see Emmylou, and it's like, just leave the dance floor. It's not like you say.
Because that's one thing I know why a lot of those people dig playing the American Legion is because when was the last time they got to play in front of a bunch of dancers? It's been many, many years. And they get to have that energy back from the crowd, and which is great, and everyone's doing old dance numbers. And that's the cool thing is like Vince Gill, Rodney Crowell, and Emmylou Harris, they're playing a whole bunch of Hank Williams songs, they're playing Kitty Wells, they're doing all old dance numbers. They weren't, like, it's cool when they got to play some of their own original stuff, but they were, playing homage to once was before them, which was the dance hall crowd.
What was possibly Nashville? As best as a representation of what they might have looked like in those days. When I interview people like JC's like the 75. You see him at Roberts and stuff. I love stories from him because he was a music road photographer, a bunch of stuff. He's got tons of stories. And what I get is that country wasn't as big as it is now. And Nashville had country music, but country musicians it was like local entertainers.
Yeah.
But it's hard for us to see them other than as massive celebrities or massive stars. They've become that, but they weren't that at the time. Yeah. And so they did interact, and they did live, and they'd go to these dances, and it was a much more subdued thing. It wasn't big nationwide like it is now. Yeah,
it wasn't too much at all. Like of course, in the 40s, they would go overseas to the USO shows. They'd bring the Opry out there for soldiers, but of course then, that's Americans out overseas. And of course, in some of those cities, when they weren't doing the USO shows, they would do little tours around, in the UK, in Germany and such. but really country music hadn't gone that much overseas until Ray Charles actually started recording country music. That was
That's really
the early 1960s, and that's really what turned on like the Beatles onto country, because they got to hear more of it. And at that time, that was when rock and roll was really like taking over from the mid 50s to the early 60s, and that whole like era was really all drawn out from rockabilly and country and western music. But really what made it even, because people back then, like I said, the Beatles, they were hearing what they thought was underground, but at the time, Buck Owens and all the R&B songs they were covering, which they would later cover Buck Owens in '64. But prior to all that, that was not as amplified until Ray Charles came out. Ray Charles made it.
This is the beautiful thing about American
Made it a
music.
1,000 times
African
bigger.
American
Yeah.
guy, comes along. I mean, and this is the beautiful thing. Like, there's that interplay, and people forget just how important. Whether it's Howlin' Wolf listening to Jimmy Rogers.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just, and Jimmy Rogers is from Mississippi. It's not. The connections are really strong, and if you really want to go deep, Native American Indians play a huge part. Like,
Oh yeah, 100%.
Charlie Madden, Dockery Farms.
Yeah.
It's like an interconnection. Like, you can't have one without the other. All three came together as a package.
Yeah.
Even though it seems sometimes like, Appalachians are here and New Orleans is here, but it's a whole bunch of interaction between the two.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is amazing. What are some of your favorite nights like at the Legion? Like, you must, you're like, I know the zone because I used to run clubs. You get in a zone and you kind of, you try and, it's almost like you're maitre d'. So it's, you're trying to say hello to everyone and you kind of try and keep things going.
Country western politician.
Yeah, basically you have to be a politician. People don't appreciate that when you're running a club. It's like literally like being a politician.
Yeah.
But for you, like, when do you stand back and you go, oh my God, and you also have to play. And I mean, I used to have to, I'd tear my hair out if I had to play in a band, DJ, and be a maitre d' at a club.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm just insane tonight. I'll never do this again.
Yeah.
So when do you get to sort of step back and go, okay, wow.
Yeah, I usually, I always enjoy the first few and last couple songs of each group. But majority of the time, like, there'll be at least 2 to 3 song period in between the middle of someone's set is usually when I go outside to get my breather, just kind of take in the air a little bit, a little safety meeting, and then head back inside and then go straight back into the country politician.
Yeah, I know.
And it's but it's cool, because like I enjoy talking to people, and that's what I live off of. Is
it's a buzz to seeing something work.
Yeah.
And making something happen and being part of something. You kind of go, well, you get up every day and you're like, you got a purpose, and you see it happening, so it's working. So
yeah.
You just kind of keep doing it, the Cowpokes, like being in the band, like, and seeing the band kind of evolve, I guess, over the years, because I think you had 2 singers at the start.
Yeah,
One of them went off to be, he did quite well.
Yeah, we've all had our quite big share of our group. We've had everyone. We start off with Logan Ledger and Kevin Martin being our singers, and Logan's been doing really well for himself. And we've had
Steve Earle or something.
Yeah, and then from there, just pretty much kind of a Kevin, and then to Sierra joining the group as well, and then now Sierra's doing really well for herself, and Greg Gary now being part of the group, and then to Emily Ninny's also been part of the group. We've had so many different, quite a few different people being part of our group, and we're always happy to.
As well. I mean, your steel plays what, Hank 3?
Yeah, exactly.
The drummer is like.
Yeah, plays everyone with Emmylou Harris, Jim Lauderdale, and Carlin Carter, Rodney Crowell, all those guys, and that's actually which goes back to what's helped out so much with having Emmylou Harris and all those folks on is having people like John McTeague playing behind us, and people who played there, because they then tell their big bosses, like, hey, I play with these other guys at this place. You guys got to be a part of it. And
Mark Thornton as well.
Yeah, Mark Thornton. Like yeah, exactly.
Jim Reed or
Jerry Reed.
Sorry, Jerry
Yeah.
Reed. It's like what?
Mm-hmm.
You know. In fact, I've like pestered him. Like I said, did you like leave your recorder on when Jerry was in the studio? Did you have much like spoke of no? I'm like, you should have started doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah, man. Like, and Mark also has a killer studio of his own. You know that he has all only old recording microphones to everything. Like it's just he really brings it back to the old days, which
right. And
I
collectively with your back line and how many years they've all lived in Nashville, you know, when you add all that up, it's kind of a lot of time under the belt. Like,
yeah, a lot of time, and me and Kevin are the babies. Well, Ryan, our piano player, him and I are really close in age, and then Kevin's a couple years younger than us, but we're the young babies. They all have at least 15 years or more on us.
So Kevin's now going on tour with his band?
Yeah, with a square dance group called the Hog Slop String Band. Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic, and that's why.
Yeah, Greg is in the picture when Kevin's gone, but we've actually swallowed up Greg a little bit, and he is now a permanent member of the Cowpokes, even when Kevin is here in town.
Okay, it just grows.
Yeah.
You'll have to build a stage out of it.
Yeah, so it just keeps on building, and which is cool because, you know, whenever Greg then has his gigs, the Cowpokes, they're his backing band. So we just kind of...
Which I think, again, if you're not from Nashville, then you wouldn't know that happens a lot. There's like that...
Yeah, it doesn't happen really anywhere else. Like, you hear people coming from Los Angeles or New York City and the music scene out there, or even Austin. Even in Austin as well, is like, they come out here and they see that, oh yeah, I was at Robert's last night and that member was playing with that member, and then 3 days later I'm at the Cobra and I saw those members play with that member, then they're playing with that singer down at the Legion the next day, you know. So it's that really only happens here, and you know the thing is, that's cool because, you know what, it grows each group to become, you know, it brings different genres into different crowds, you know what I mean? Like a guitar player who's like exactly.
Right?
You have like a rock and roll guitar player who usually plays these certain country gigs with this singer because she is a little bit more on the rock and roll side. So it brings in those rock and roll fans to hear this country sound that turns on these people into new country fans, you know, and like it all coincides and then makes it a much bigger thing.
Yeah, crazy. And so, is Laura May Sox, is that a record label that you guys have started?
Yeah. So myself and Casey McBride, people know him as Pickle. He's the we like to call him the loudmouth, but all in good terms, of course. But
Pickle is cool.
Yeah.
He won't mind.
No, he wouldn't. He's the life of the party, you know. Mm-hmm. He gets a crowd going and gets them rowdy and gets them ready before each group plays. He'll be like, if no one's dancing, he'll be the one to get the dance floor going. He's the start of it all, and you know, he's just the fire starter. We're happy to have him, and he actually is also the washtub bass player in Kevin's square dance band.
Right, and I think Laura May was saying that he manages Laura May now.
Yeah, and so through that, he and I kind of took upon our honky tonk stuff and started a record label called Roundup Records, which is just an umbrella underneath the Honky Tonk Roundup, which kind of puts on all of the different events that we do in town. And Casey's the one who's pretty much, I'd say, the president of it. He's the one that's totally making things happen for people, and especially people like Laura May Sox, getting her going and getting more recognition, you know, that she deserves.
For sure, that's a great
great record, some great dancing tunes. And then pretty soon we're going to start hearing a new record by Tim Bolo. He's about finished up with that, and that's another thing that'll be with Roundup Records. And then a new Greg Green record with the Cowpokes as the backing band.
Wow, there you go.
We'll have a Cowpokes 45 coming out here soon. So there's a bunch of stuff coming up around the band that'll be
That's
cool.
super exciting. I think you've got a healthy ecosystem if all this stuff is evolving around it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a crazy city. Like, it's a crazy city. I was driving down 8th and I saw like, I think it's Lily Mae Rishi, is that
Yeah.
right? And like a big poster of her album release on Spotify or
Mhm.
something. Through
Yeah.
Jack White's. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, where can you live where people around you are just constantly, you know, releasing records and involved in music? And I think the one thing I'd say is like it's not it's like and they mentioned this in the Ken Burns thing. It's like a artist commune. Nashville's like one of the last of the artists or communes, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. You can't take that stuff for granted because it's not in New York. It's not in London.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in these places it's typically been in. I don't even know if it's in. I've not found it in anywhere that I've been, and yet it's still it's still here. And I think it's important that it thrives.
And that's why it attracts so many people. It doesn't matter what really style of music you play, but you're a musician and you just dig music and you're wanting to play and be a part of it. They all come here. It doesn't matter what genre it is.
Yeah, I agree. I was telling someone today, I think Glenn Danzig from the Misfits had a house here for a while.
Doesn't surprise me.
A whole bunch of quirky people. You go to Fanny's and the guy that does one of the guys working there is like Lou Reed's old guitar tech or something like that. You know, it's that kind of place.
It really is.
And if you're into music, it's amazing, but you realize that they're also seeking refuge because a lot of that stuff is disappearing in other places, so they're all flocking here to where you can still live with record shops and, you know, East Nashville feels like the 90s sometimes, you know.
It really does. It really does. It kind of brings you back.
Yeah, and weird stuff, man, like some really weird random stuff about Nashville, like the first 3 Sabbath albums seem to be really important here. You come from the UK, you're like, it's really random that Nashville would take first 3 Sabbath or first 4 Sabbath albums so seriously, and some random stuff here. Because I guess it's primarily about music, and it happens to also be the epicenter of country. But country's probably just something that pulled in everything.
Yeah, country is. But you know, like Bob Dylan did when he went electric, he did his records here and hired all country players, and it's just. Yeah, it's just everyone comes here. Doesn't like I said, it doesn't matter what kind of genre, but it just kind of brings everyone here. You know, they just re-released maybe it was about like 10 years ago this Neil Young record he put out called the Neil Young and the International Harvest Band, and it's with Farron Young's backing band.
Wow.
And it's a album you really wouldn't hear, but just because they did a re-release of the bootleg of it. Mm-hmm. That was recorded in some barn, and it's an amazing fucking country record. Mm-hmm. And who would have thought? You know, of course, Neil Young has always had like country background to it, but
yeah, that's a good point. I think the rest of the world often looks at the musician that fronts a band as the sort of face of the band or face of the music, whereas here the musician and the backing band is equally as important.
Exactly.
That is again not a given.
Yeah, that only happens here.
Yeah, it only happens here. Like, just down the road, there's actually a Musicians Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so where they recognize the producers and you know, and all this other stuff. So
yeah, it's so true. Like here, you go to a gig, everyone knows who the band members are in each group. Mm-hmm. You go to Los Angeles and you're like, oh, you ask the person who lives there, oh, hey, who's that fiddler over there? I have no idea. Like, no one knows that stuff. They only know that. Yeah, that's crazy.
It is. It's
Never thought about that.
Yeah, it's easy to take for granted when you're here, because like here, there's nights where I come home and I'm like, I can't listen to any more music.
Yeah.
Like
it's so true, and that never happens anywhere else.
Never ever anywhere.
That can
else.
never happen anywhere else.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's like
it's cool.
It is cool. It is really cool. And so, where to? Like with Honky Tonk Tuesdays, with a record label, producing. You guys have tried to like do other nights, and you know this is the other thing I was gonna say. It's the venue, the people, and the night, because like you happen to hit upon. So every time anyone comes from anywhere here, I say make sure you're here for Monday and Tuesdays, because the musicians are off, and that's when they go out. That's the weekend.
It's true.
The weekend's really boring here.
Yeah, it is so true, and that's kind of how another reason why Tuesday night was the night to pick, was because I knew everyone that was in the industry, they're in town Monday, Tuesday, most of the time Wednesday, but they leave for tour Thursday through Sunday. And so I knew if I wanted my friends to be a part of Tuesday nights, then I knew that was the nights they were in town.
Yeah, again, people take it for granted, but you probably try it every other night of the week, and you're like, damn it.
No, I kind of knew to start off with the Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of knew. But, you know, of course, you know, we do Saturday nights.
Mm-hmm.
And then
we've tried every
Thursday
other night,
after all of that, you know. But it really does. It depends on the establishment and what else is going on in town.
Yeah, and that another thing, it's not just the venue, it's not just the night, it's not just the people that come to present, it's the fact that, like you said, the people that work the Legion, their heart's in it, the everyday people that just attend, you know, it's like a good cause. There's all these kind of things that just kind of come back to support each other.
Yeah, exactly.
To make it like a thriving thing, because it doesn't feel like 4 years have passed.
Not at all.
You know, so, and that's insane in itself. You must kind of go, what the hell?
Yeah, it goes by pretty quick.
Jesse, I see him down at the Legion now too. So like, you know, he must be like, he's quite. Every time I've seen him talk, he's very religious about the importance of Roberts to country. And that. So he must be impressed to see like little things.
Oh yeah, he loves it, and you know, he's a really good friend of mine, and you know, he's more like a family member, I'd say, and
maybe a mentor.
Yeah, a mentor for sure, and he's definitely helped out a lot with the new coolers that are at the Legion now. Jesse got them for the Legion.
Wow.
You know, like that's how much he cares about the Legion and cares about
like
what's going on. You know, like Roberts funds a lot of stuff for the Legion you would never think. You know. Like we do Honky Tonk Saturday night, the first Saturday of every month, sponsored by Roberts Western World. Some of the microphones and XLR cables originally came from Roberts, you know. So it's Roberts has a lot to do with our Honky Tonk Tuesdays or Honky Tonk Saturdays. Another reason
used to run the Palace for a while.
And I ran the Palace for Jesse when Robertson.
And that was amazing then. That triangle of venues was just you know, not to say it's not great now, it's just then it was run by all these people,
exactly,
like a collection of. So.
I wish it was still that way. If it was still Roberts, Legion, Palace, I'm not kidding, man. We'd have the hugest trifecta.
Yeah, and
Bermuda Triangle of country music.
Totally, it was when I got here those first 2 years. I was like, oh my god. But this place is also super transitory. Like, I can tell you a bunch of people that were in that scene that have kind of moved on to other states. Nashville's kind of weird like that. I mean, I thought London was transitory, but it's nothing like Nashville. People come and they go.
Come and go so quick. And, you know, this town has some juju to it, you know?
For sure.
Like, initially, the capital wasn't here in Nashville. They made the capital later on in the years. Right? Yeah, Knoxville first. They later on made it. They made it here because there wasn't, at the time, quote unquote, Indian problems. Really? So they moved the capital here because of that, and the Indians didn't like Nashville because they thought it was haunted. Because they didn't understand why they felt so sick every time they would come in here. So it was only a hunting territory.
Yeah.
And what it later on turns out is it's allergies. Everyone has terrible, terrible allergies in Nashville. Say a lot of people who haven't had allergies in the past, they move to Nashville. After here a while, they start having allergies.
Yeah, they called it the Village of the Sick. Someone told me that Nashville was called by the Indians the Village of the Sick in their dialect or something.
Yeah, because everyone would feel so sick over here, and they would sneeze nonstop, or you know, they just didn't feel themselves. And what that is was later we find out bee pollen, and you know all the different.
Damn allergies.
There's so many allergies. Bee pollen is like what people try to put it on the most, but there's thousands other types of allergies that are out there than just bee pollen.
Like, so if I was to tell someone moving to Nashville, like the things to worry about, that would be one of them. And I would say it's not unusual for you to be in hospitals for the first couple of years with all sorts of quirky things, and maybe.
I was in the hospital first. Yeah, man. There's so many things, man.
Same. It was like I couldn't tell you how crazy it got.
Yeah.
But I've talked to lots of other people and they had the same experience. And even you go to doctors and they're like, Yeah, no, you don't have asthma. You know, you're not having heart problems. It's Nashville.
Yeah, you're just
So-
having an anxiety attack.
Oh God, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, to your point, there's all this stuff at play, and it's you know, it's truly an interesting city like that. It'd be interesting, you know, like Paul McCartney stayed here a couple of years. That's it, I think. Leonard Cohen, a couple of years. That's all he could muster. Bob, a couple of years.
Ringo Starr.
There's the guy from what's his name? I always forget his name, but like heaps of them that have come and gone. They can't make more than a few years, you know.
Yeah, they only can last a few years, man. But that goes for like a lot of the people who've been in Austin for all these years. They
Right.
originally started out here, but after the first year, few months, they
have different problems, yeah. They have
just left,
mold
you know.
problems. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Maybe that's part of the way it works too. I don't.
Yeah, you just gotta either have the heart to fight it off, or to be able to somehow muster it all.
Crazy. I didn't hear about that Knoxville one. But then you go Memphis too. You know, like I came here thinking that like Tennessee would be Tennessee. You know, and
Yeah.
you're all connected, and somehow you'd be seeing things going on in every city. But somehow, again, it seems to focus in on Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville's the heart of the state.
At the minute, the way it is now.
Yeah, the way it is now, you know, it's the heart, it's the revenue, what makes all the revenue for the state. And, yeah, at one point, you know, of course, all those towns were hopping and thriving.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the last, you know, 30, 40 years, each one of those cities has, you know, slowly started fading away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had the World's Fair out in Knoxville. They had all this stuff going on, but still Nashville's always kind of like kept that steady pace, and now Nashville's just kind of skyrocketed. But hopefully, you know, in the next couple of years, Memphis can bring back the title that they've always had for having music and bringing such diversity, and hopefully Knoxville can do the same thing, and of course Chattanooga and all that,
Yeah,
you know.
even include that. And you go to Knoxville and you see that main strip with that theater, the Tennessean, I think it is.
Mhm.
You're like, this is. You could be in New York, just that one street.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
You can see what it could have been, what they
Mhm.
looked to be, and yeah, Memphis. It speaks for itself. You can tell that it was once the capital of the South. You know,
Yeah.
and stuff. So. And has there ever been a call to do Honky Tonk Tuesday in other parts of Tennessee?
Yeah, we it's been a dream of mine to do it for quite some time. We just haven't been able to do it yet, but to do like a special Legion tour, and that's just visiting all the different Legion halls around the United States. You know, we've done one in
That's amazing.
Austin before.
Mhm.
You know, we're just trying to do it in all different places. We also have some friends that have started some nights in other cities that are based around Honky Tonk Tuesdays.
Nights.
Yeah. And they call them Honky Tonk Tuesday nights as well.
Mhm.
And
What kind of cities? Like, do we know?
Detroit, Knoxville, we have Little Rock, there's Denver.
All in legions. All in American.
Not all legions. There's a San Diego one as well. But they're not all legions. And some of the cities, there's not a legion present. So, you know, there'd be either VFW or they were able to start it at like a bar that would allow them to do it. But it's still kind of around the same sense of what we started.
Yeah, and I sent you that article that I found one day in the Wall
Yeah,
Street
yeah,
Journal. I
in
was
Hollywood.
Like, get out. You
Yeah.
know,
And I know that one. I've walked past it hundreds of times.
I'm sure they turned up to this one.
Yeah.
And like, well, like, great idea. Let's go do this somewhere
Yeah,
else. You know, but
exactly.
ultimately, I guess you can't directly capitalize on it because they're non-profits.
Exactly.
So in that way, it's kind of nice too because it keeps it DIY. You know?
Mhm.
I think too many things people do just for corporate or
Exactly.
capital reason, and I think that's what kills a lot of stuff. Punk's a good example of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of a nice clause in the contract that kind of keeps things real. You got to do this because you love it, because really, that's you can't really make profit off this directly.
So true.
Well and good if you can make it outside of this, but what you're doing for these guys, you got to do it for them.
Yep.
And that's awesome. That's like an awesome byproduct of all this or whatever, you know. So that's really cool to hear. I'd love to see something like this in Memphis too. I've said that to you 100 times. I know Dale Watson's opened something up down there.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be able to get something going in there.
Yeah, I'd love to see what that would look like again, you know, to see what, like, because, you know, that Elvis wouldn't have existed in a way if there wasn't someone like the Starlight Wranglers that he played with effectively.
Yeah.
You know, Scotty and Bill. So there must have been like little honky tonks in Memphis too, you know.
Exactly, man. And all that stuff is so important, so important. But it always gets lost in the mix of stardom, you know. Like with not with stardom with Elvis, but with the way that people present the music, you know. Like they only represent the singer and so much, not the players.
Right. Or the culture.
Yeah.
You know, the culture's important too. Like that's the other thing. Like, you know, I don't know how old you are now, man, but like, so
34.
34. So I'm 44. So like I went through the punk, goth, alternative indie, metal, everything. I love subculture. Like, you know, and there's still a subculture here around what you guys do, which means people have a sense of dress and they dress up for the occasion, and it's, you know, it's a whole thing. It's a whole package you buy into. It's not just you go see a band and you walk away with a t-shirt or something. Yeah. And that's disappearing too. You don't have subcultures anymore. So this is kind of like a little subculture, you know, that allows people in. And again, I don't know why that stuff is disappearing, but it is. And you know, I wouldn't be the person I am without subculture. So I don't know what kids have now that replaces that. That kind of worries me for them because it was so much fun. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, before, you know, like I think I lived in the last generation that actually had to record tape from the radio to hear your favorite song, and if you couldn't go buy the record, you recorded it from the radio to a cassette tape. You know, you made your own mixtapes, and then came computers where you then can burn a CD and burn a mixtape, and so music has definitely changed because you had to search for what you liked in a way, and you went to those record stores to find that one record you loved or trying to find that one song. Now everything's kind of force fed to you on what you like and what you should like, and there's then bullying into it, like, oh, you don't like that, well, you're not cool. So people then like stuff because they don't want to be framed as not cool, and it's just the whole generations have definitely changed, and that goes with television as well. Changed everything. So
that's right. Music videos had like an impact at the time, and that maybe amplified some things about subculture because of representation, and you know, so you know, and probably even if you would go back to the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even before, music has always evolved with technology and what's on offer. Like even radio, the importance of radio to Nashville. Like you can't. So it's always been a marriage of sorts.
Oh yeah,
of music,
of course.
And so to a degree, you can't control that in a way. Yeah. Except that you can kind of honor the past and keep certain things alive. And I think the one thing that subculture has had up to now, which I'm worried is going, is community. And so the one thing I'd say about American Legion is it's like a community. Literally, I swear that most of my friends, you know, will sit there and have a drink and be like, don't know what I'd do in Nashville without this place to meet like-minded people. Yeah. You know, you'd be really lonely here otherwise. And a lot of people are lonely in Nashville.
So true.
A lot of my expat friends have flown home because they're like, I can't do it, you know. And it's like, it's true, and it's little things like that become so important. Like, and it's not just expats. It's like my American friends from different states have the same feeling about it. Yep. So I think, so it's important. Whatever that is, however we keep a community going, whether it's Jesse running Roberts, and even I don't think Jesse appreciates the significance of Robert. He probably does because you start to see all these celebrities come in and it's referenced in a lot of things now.
Oh yeah.
But I've had random conversations with random people in England, in like the suburbs of England, where that damn name comes up, and it's fantastic. Oh yeah. You know, you're like, it's a stronghold for old country music. Something, and it means something to a lot of people elsewhere. You know, but if it wasn't for one guy who puts all his effort and money into it, and time, it's like a lot of time. Yeah, a lot of time. And if you want to age quickly, you do one thing all the time. Yeah. So like, I take my hat off to Jesse because, you know, I'm sure that running Roberts ages him.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because you're regularly on this cycle with something.
Definitely.
So it's a big sacrifice. It's not people. I think people go, "That's great," and I'm sure it's great, but these people put like their soul into this stuff.
Soul and effort.
Yeah, and I think to the extent I can, I say I appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you.
Every Tuesday.
Thanks, Frankie.
Thanks for listening to the Bring It On Home podcast. For suggestions or questions, email us at diamondjive@gmail.com.